Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan from stepbysteppainting.net, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to show you how to paint this winter path on an 11 by 14 inch canvas with acrylics. So I'm going to go ahead and get started right away. Again, I'm using an 11 by 14 inch canvas, and the first thing I'm going to do, so my canvas is in vertical position. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the basic composition of this landscape painting. So this landscape painting has the horizon line going right down the center of the canvas. So you can estimate that, or if you wanted to, you can get a ruler, like I'm doing the T-square ruler here, and I'm just making sure my line is going horizontal across the canvas, and that horizon line is right in the middle of the painting, so you can kind of estimate the exact center of the canvas and do your line. So I'm just sketching a path that kind of winds to the right and then it goes to the left and it gets wide at the bottom. And then, so notice the horizon line, it doesn't go to a point, it's still flat along the horizon line. So I'm just lightly sketching the path. You can make your path go a different way if you want. If you wanted it more straight or if you wanted it more curvy, you can kind of adjust that. And so next we're going to do the sky. So our sky is this really pretty blue. It's got two blues in it and white. And it's very bright along that center part of our path, and it gets darker outwards from it. So I'm going to do this technique with a 3/4 inch flat wash brush that I'm dipping in the water and kind of tapping dry. I'm not going to dry this brush off because I want the water to kind of thin my paint out a little bit, and that's going to help with the blending. So I have the titanium white and the light blue violet on my palette. I'm going to start with those two colors. So it's that light, it's a really pretty blue actually. It's got a hint of purple in it. That's why it's called light blue violet. And so I'm making a very, very light color in here. It's about 5 parts white to 1 part of that light blue violet. So I'm just kind of gently blending those two colors together. That's going to be my bright color that's right there in the center, just above the middle part of the path. So I have those colors loaded on the tip of the brush, and I'm going to do small strokes that are going in different angles. So I'm kind of flip-flopping my brush right here in the center, just above that path. Flip-flopping the brush and applying that very pretty icy blue color. And I grabbed just a teeny bit of white right there on the brush. I want this part of the sky to be very light, very bright. And I'm going to gradually add some more of that light blue violet. Start on the outer part of that because that's going to be darker and we want it to blend. And we want to gently, gently blend that into our bright part of the sky. So our sky is going to gradually get darker as we work outwards from that center area. And so I'm just going to keep gradually introducing more of that light blue violet into my sky using that technique of flip-flopping the brush. I call these expressive strokes. Sometimes I call them X strokes because you're kind of painting little X's everywhere. Angled strokes, it's kind of all the same thing. A beautiful technique for blending colors and for making expressive style paintings. I'm purposefully allowing my color to not blend all the way because I like that different variety of the white and the blue, but the object is to kind of get it to be darker as we work our way out. I am adding a little bit more white in this area because I still want this area to be kind of light, but I am going to start introducing more pure light blue violet as I kind of end up in that middle part of the sky. And then we're going to be working with another blue as well here in a little bit. That ultramarine blue is going to be introduced in our sky eventually. I'm just going to keep applying more of that light blue violet to the sky. You want to try to work at a decent pace because the acrylic paints do dry very fast. And so you don't want to overblend it, but you still want to keep that color wet enough to where we can blend. So right at this point, I am introducing mostly that light blue violet to the edges, but I am going to grab some ultramarine blue here in just a little bit. That ultramarine blue is a blue color that has a little bit of purple in it, so it does blend nicely with that blue violet color. So I didn't even rinse my brush. I just grabbed a little bit of that paint right there on the tip, and I'm just going to kind of add that. By not rinsing the brush, that does help with the blending because we already have those other two colors on there, and it just kind of helps get that color established. But that's on the outer edges, and then I grabbed more light blue violet to kind of help get that to blend. It's a little bit of a transition because that ultramarine blue is quite a bit darker than our blue violet color. So to kind of make up for that, I'm grabbing more blue violet and more white and kind of bringing that up into that darker color, and also kind of bringing that darker color down into that lighter area. But keep in mind that we want our middle part above the horizon line to be our brightest area. So we don't want to get too dark in that area. We want that part to be nice and bright. So I'm just kind of gently blending our colors on the canvas. You can see all those strokes. I like the look of those strokes. If you didn't like it, you can go in and kind of work the color a little bit more to smooth out your strokes, but you don't want to over blend it because then we end up with the sky that's kind of all the same color. I'm just gonna I wiped my brush off there because I wanted to just grab some more of the ultra and just kind of introduce that right on the edges, have some pops of really dark blue in there. Again, try not to over blend. There's a lot of paint on this, so it's kind of hard to get this ultra to really stand out because there's a lot of white and light blue violet that's kind of not allowing it to take over too much. So just gently blending angled strokes, and a lot of this is going to be covered by tree, like disguised by trees. So if your sky looks messy and just strokes that are very strong, keep in mind there's going to be a lot of stuff going on in our painting that's going to be kind of disguising our sky anyway. I'm just going to do one final little kind of blend in here, just kind of push the colors around, but that's it. I'm not going to overwork it because then it's just going to end up kind of being all the same color. I'm going to move along and do the path. There's another blue I'm going to introduce in this painting, and that's phthalo blue. So this particular phthalo blue is kind of a greenish blue color. It doesn't pull purple, it pulls kind of a green color, which is nice because it kind of gives a different look to the bottom part of our painting. So it's not kind of the same color as the sky. So I have the phthalo blue on my palette, and I'm going to use the 3/4 flat to do the path. So the technique with this path is left and right strokes, thinned down paint. So I did the water thing. I rinsed my brush off, applied the water, and kind of used that water to thin my phthalo blue down a little bit. And our path is going to be kind of a combination of that phthalo blue with the titanium white. So I mixed a little bit of white with that. And I will be using some of the ultra light blue violet in there too, just to kind of make things a little bit more interesting in our path. But we're doing left and right strokes, thin strokes, and starting at the bottom and just kind of working my way up to the horizon line. I am going outside the lines because it's a little tedious to just kind of have to stay inside of those path lines. If you wanted to stay inside the lines, you can, but we will be covering the path sides with snow. We'll define the path sides later on. So going outside the lines is perfectly fine. Don't worry if you lose your drawing. We can always redraw it or redefine that path later. So I kind of want my path to be lighter in the distance and a teeny bit darker towards the bottom. So that's why I did a little bit more of the phthalo blue at the bottom. And I'm doing a little bit extra white towards the top just to make it lighter. Left and right strokes. I'm using a lot of the tip of the brush to create that thin sort of streaky technique. When you go reload the brush, you can grab a little bit of each color each time. So that time I grabbed the white. Next time I might grab more of the phthalo. You are welcome to grab some of the light blue violet to get some pops of that light violet color in there. Same with the ultra if you want to introduce a little bit of that ultra in there. But you can see how the color of the blue looks a lot different from the sky. That kind of helps our path stand out. And so I'll just do a little bit of that light blue violet this time and just go in there and do a few strokes in there. I don't want my light blue violet to take over because I don't want it to look just like the sky. Just a few little pops of that purplish blue color in there. Makes a very pretty icy sort of look in our path. I can grab some white and just do some more extra pops of white right there way in the distance. And we can always add more color to our path later. Then, so this could be our first layer of our path. We are going to do the snow next on the left and the right. We want to go ahead and dry, so we can take a break and come back, or you can get a hair dryer and dry this. I want to dry this because we're working with white, and we want this white for the snow, at least in the beginning, to be bright white so that we can cover the parts of the path that we don't want, the parts that we went outside the line. So I am drying my path right now with a hair dryer. And you want to freshen up some titanium white on your palette so you have a nice bright white color to work with. And I'm using a number 8 round brush. So I have the round brush loaded in the white. Good thick amount of paint. This is going to be thick texture, so I didn't utilize the water. Right now, I'm just taking my brush and I'm outlining my path with the white. So that drawing I did in the beginning with pencil, I'm just going over that with the white paint. I can't really see my pencil right now through the paint. I can see it a little bit. So I'm just kind of estimating what that looked like. So there's my path, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to do some very thick texture strokes on the side of those lines. So this is where that snow is kind of piling up next to the path. I'm doing little sort of rounded strokes. I'm going to do that on both sides of the path. This is going to cover our blue icy color that we don't want, like on the sides of it that we don't want. And it's also going to kind of establish how we're going to do the rest of the snow in this painting because it's thick textured strokes, a lot different than the strokes we did for the path. So the little rounded thick strokes on the ends of that line. So little tiny thick strokes. Get the blue paint kind of covered up. I'm just going to keep doing that on this side. And you can have it go outside the line a little bit, so your path doesn't have to be like a perfectly curved line. So there could be some snow that's kind of piling up and kind of seeping over the edge of where it's supposed to be. That is fine. Notice I'm not covering all of the blue that kind of got on the outside part yet. I'm just making sure my path is defined. That's the goal right now. We will paint the rest of the snow area here in a little bit, and those little blue streaks will be all covered up. But for now, I'm just really making sure my path is nice and defined. So if you look at the final product of this, you'll see that the snow is not pure white. If you look closely, there's blue in our snow. So we're going to start introducing some blue in our snow. This gives our snow a lot of depth and like shadowy areas. It's not exactly pure white snow. And so on my palette, I just kind of mixed a very light blue. I grabbed a little bit of the phthalo, a little bit of the light blue violet. You can really utilize all of those blues on your palette here. It doesn't really matter really which blue you choose. So just you want to make like a very light blue on your palette. And I'm gonna start in the background, so way in the back, and I'm going to just kind of fill in my snow. These strokes are very similar to the strokes we did along the path. They're very long, thick, wavy strokes. I'm not thinning this paint down with water. We want it to be relatively thick, so we're applying a good amount of paint to the brush, and I'm just doing long, wavy or slightly wavy strokes, utilizing different amounts of the white, little bits of blue in there. You don't want to use too much blue. We don't want it to look like the sky. You want it to still have enough contrast. And above the horizon line, I actually made the snow a little bit lumpy. So I did kind of an uneven land that goes above the horizon line a little bit, so the horizon line is not exactly a straight horizontal line. It's kind of lumpy. And I'm just going to continue filling up the left and right part of the path using thick, long, wavy strokes, using varying amounts of the white and the blue. Some areas have a little bit more blue than the other areas, especially towards the bottom. So if we're thinking kind of perspective here, the snow would be slightly darker towards the bottom because it's closer, and a lot brighter and lighter way in the distance. It just kind of how we create some landscape perspective in paintings. We make things lighter in the distance and kind of darker towards the bottom. So we can do that a little bit with our snow, but it doesn't have to be exactly that way. You can still have bright white color on the bottom and a little bit darker in the back. If you want to do it that way, that's fine. A lot of this is going to be covered up by trees, so don't worry if you're not doing it perfect. Just kind of concentrate on filling all of your canvas up with these thick strokes. And so you can kind of see me doing this on the bottom, adding a little bit more of that. I'm using the phthalo blue on the bottom, and I'm just kind of blending that up. You just want to make sure not to do too much blue because we don't want to lose our path, like the contrast in the path. We want that to be a lot darker than our snow. We don't want our snow to blend in with the sky. That snow should be a lot brighter than the sky color. So you want to just kind of be careful not to add too much blue into your painting. And just kind of going a little bit fast here, but doing like some textured strokes, kind of the strokes that I did on the path, the left and right path. I'm just kind of beating this brush up here, doing that, kind of like tapping the brush to create some texture in there. You can have fun and do some expressive textures in there, little stippling. Just want to make sure not to over blend it. Have some variety of different tints of that blue in there. It's not all solid the same color all throughout. Okay, so we are going to transition onwards to the trees in this painting. So you can take a break or you can go ahead and dry your painting, especially since we applied a lot of thick paint in this area. We want to make sure that's nice and dry for our trees so our trees aren't going to get all messed up from that thick white paint. So I am using Mars Black paint, applying that to my palette there, and I'm going to use the number 8 round brush to paint the trees. So when I use the Mars Black, I like to thin it down to like an ink consistency. You don't want it to be drippy, but you don't want it to be thick. The thin amount of that paint is going to be easier to work with because it's flowy. And so with the tree, I'm going to start on the bottom. I'm going to use the tip of my brush to kind of sketch my trunk here. Now, if you're not comfortable with your trees yet, I would recommend maybe drawing them lightly with a pencil first, and then you can erase it as needed, and then you can go and paint when you're kind of happy with the way your tree looks. But I'm just kind of sketching this slowly. The trunk trumpets out, and then it goes up and it gets thin. And look where that branch, the first branch that kind of goes to the left, the position of that, it's well above the horizon line. So this is a tall tree that's in the foreground towards the bottom of our painting. So you want to make sure you get the sizing accurate here. So our branches are well above the horizon line at this point. So it starts branching out, and our tree starts making branches at about the horizon line, and then our branches go up and angles over our path. So you can do as many branches as you want. So when I do branches, I press a little bit hard with my brush, and then I release the pressure, and the branch kind of thins up a little bit and goes to a point. So a little bit more pressure and release, a little bit more pressure and release. So it's kind of all about brush control. And so we'll do this, a little bit pressure and release. So that when I release, that means I'm letting go of the brush a little bit and lightly holding it, allowing the branch to go to a point. So using the tip of the brush and holding it lightly, that's going to create your thin line. But when you press harder, that's going to create some thicker lines. So it's really all about brush control. So you want to just kind of add as many branches as you want. This is a winter tree, so there's not going to be any leaves on it. There will be Christmas lights on it, but no leaves. And so our next tree is on the left side of the path. It's a very similar, almost duplicate tree, only it's on the left side. So you want to go ahead and kind of determine where the bottom part of the trunk is. So I'm going to get my black, let's water down just slightly to an ink consistency, and then do your bottom of the trunk and the bottom of our painting. So this is a big tree, so we started towards the bottom, did sketch out the trunk that kind of flutes out at the bottom. And then we want to just kind of keep sketching that tree as I work my way up. Our branches, our tree starts branching out when we get to about that horizon line. I can go in and fill the bottom part of that trunk in where it flutes out. You just want to keep in mind when you're adding water to your brush not to do too much water. It should not be dripping if you're working on an easel. So if I were to put this painting on an easel, it would not be dripping. You want to just make sure not to use too much water. And then, so this branch is going out. So just kind of keep in mind the pressure of your brush. Don't press too hard. Press a little bit hard in the beginning and then release the pressure to get your branch to go to a point. So I'm just kind of slowly forming this tree. So it's very similar to the other tree, maybe a little bit smaller than that other tree. That's okay. All the trees are different. This could be a smaller tree, or maybe if you look at the bottom part of it, it is a little bit further, so it would be a little bit shorter perhaps. And there's 4 of these kind of styled trees in this painting. So I'm going to do the next one, and I'm going to use some of that white. So I'm kind of mixing a medium gray. So I'm taking that titanium white that was on my palette. I mixed it with the black to make a gray, and I'm going to do my next tree. So there's 2 trees on both sides of the path that are kind of in the same spot. I'm going to pick a spot kind of further down the path. It's a lot further down the path actually. And so same thing, start at the bottom of the trunk, kind of flutes out a little bit. And then we want to go up and branch out. So the reason why I made this one gray is because it's further in the distance. It would be a little bit lighter. If you don't want to make it gray, if you want to make all your trees black because you're simplifying this painting, that's okay. It's not going to make it look bad if this one was pure black. So just, again, forming the branches, using the tip of the brush to create the branches. If you feel like your number 8 round brush is just too big for this tree that should be small and thin branches, feel free to switch to a number 4 round or even a smaller round that you feel comfortable with. I let you know the brushes I'm using, but you don't have to use that brush. You could do this technique with an angle brush if you feel more comfortable using an angle brush or a flat brush. So you are definitely welcome to use different brushes depending on what you feel most comfortable with. And so there's my smaller tree. I'm going to repeat that on the other side of the path. So I'm just kind of mixing another dark gray on my palette here. And then I'm going to pick a spot that's kind of further in the distance. It doesn't have to be exactly lined up. This one ended up being fairly lined up with the other one, but it doesn't have to be exact. If you want to stagger your trees, you are welcome to. I did leave a decent amount of space between those two trees, the big ones and these small ones, is because there's going to be lampposts in this painting. So I wanted to make sure I had enough room for my lampposts. Otherwise, I would have added more trees to this. So again, same technique, light pressure for those smaller branches. So there's my 2 smaller trees. I'm going to make this bottom part kind of flute out a little bit more. Later on, I'll do some snow on the base of those trees, kind of piled up snow on the bottom. So next, we have several pine trees in this painting. So I'm just going to make this very simple and start at the top. And I'm using that dark gray color. So I started at the top to create the tip top of that tree. And I'm just stroking downwards. So each little like pine branch, I'm just stroking downwards using the tip of my brush to form a conical shape. So it's getting wider as I work my way down to form that sort of Christmas tree shape. So I made that a little bit more pointy right at the top. Few more branches sticking out. When that dries, we'll go and add some snow onto that. This is just the first layer of the tree. If you wanted to use green, you can use green for this instead of the gray, but I kind of just went with the gray because I know I was going to add snow to these trees anyway. So another little Christmas tree way in the back. You just want to keep in mind that we are adding lampposts to this, so you want to still keep some space available for our lampposts so it's not going to be cluttered. And so there's 2 trees, and then we can do a third one in here, just kind of envisioning where my lampposts are going to go and where I might possibly want this tree. We do have some room to put one right here, and then we can always add more pine or Christmas trees later on after we add our lamppost. If there's some openings, we can throw some more trees in there. But this just kind of the same technique of starting at the top and stroking downward with the brush to create that conical shape. So I did 3 Christmas trees way in the distance. And then next, we're going to do the lampposts. So with these lampposts, I recommend drawing them first, unless you feel super confident with your lamppost painting abilities. I feel a little bit better if I draw this in because it's a structure. It looks better if it's got a nice vertical line to it. So I usually just start by drawing the base. It's kind of like a cylinder sort of shape. And then I use a T-square to do the vertical post. So I line that T-square to the canvas to make sure my post is nice and vertical. And then I can find out how crooked my trees are at that point. And then I do the top part of the lamppost, the lamp part piece. So it's like an upside down triangle that's attached to the post, and then 2 diagonal lines. I used the T-square to make the top part of the lamp horizontal, and then we have a triangle piece on the top, the circle with a little notch above the circle. So if you want to look up different styles of lampposts, you can do that. You don't have to do this simplified style if you want to make it look more elaborate with some spirals, or that's something you can do. So my next lamppost, I drew kind of this one's smaller and further in the distance. So, but I did the same drawing, only a tad bit smaller because it's a little bit further away. It got a little crowded in this area, but it turned out okay because the lamp kind of is lined up with that smaller tree, but that was okay. So that's another reason why it's kind of good to draw these lampposts in first, so you get the placement correct, and if you don't like the placement, you can always just erase it and kind of draw it somewhere else. So I'm going to do the light of our lamp first before painting the lamp in, and I have Cad Yellow Medium, and I have a number 4 round brush. So I am basically painting the lamp part in solid yellow. So just yellow, no blending at this point, just coloring that shape in. Same with the other one. So that shape, kind of a trapezoid shape in there. There's like a triangle below it that's going to be a part of the lamp, but this is kind of a trapezoid, like an upside down trapezoid shape. So that's yellow. And then I'm going to do titanium white and do the bulb of our lamp. So without rinsing the brush, I grabbed the white. I'm just going to do like a circle on the inside of that. I'm going to take that and blend it out a little bit into that yellow, but I'm not painting outside the line of that shape. Same thing right here, yellow circle and just a few little strokes going in a curved direction on the outer part, but I'm not painting outside the lines of the shape of the lamp, so there's no yellow outside the lamp, at least not in this painting. And then little pops of white right in the middle to make it bright. I can always go in and add more brighter white later on after this is dried, but it's a little bit saturated, so I can't really add any more white into that. And then we can paint our lamppost in. So kind of the same thing with the trees. I'm using the black, watering it down just slightly because I want my paint to be nice and flowy. So I just grabbed a little bit of water on the tip of the brush, grabbed our black. I'm going to paint the base of the lamp. And then I will do the post and the shape of the lamp. So this part right here is an upside down triangle. So that's painted in solid. There's a little circle below that. I just added that. I didn't draw that in earlier. I just added that in there. And then very carefully do your vertical line. If your vertical line is not perfect, that is okay. And then this is a triangle on top of our lamp. So I outlined it first, and then I painted that in solid. And then we have our top piece, a little circle and a little notch on top of that circle. And then outline the sides of that. So there's our lamp, and I'm going to repeat that this same exact thing with the smaller lamp in the distance. Next, I am going to just take my finger and apply a little bit of white right there on the tip of the finger. I just want to do a kind of a bright little mark with the paint using my finger. It gets that light to be very bright right there in the middle of that lamp. Makes it look like the light is on. Next, I will be applying the snow to the trees, starting with the Christmas trees. So I'm using my 4 round and titanium white. So this is really simple. All I'm doing is applying thick strokes, and I'm starting at the bottom of the tree and kind of just stroking downwards or upwards a little bit to create little clustered areas of snow on these trees. So again, the strokes are thick. I'm using pure white. I'm not using any blue for this. Starting at the bottom of your branches and just doing little marks, little angled marks for your tree. So just starting from the bottom and working your way up, little tiny brush strokes, and a lot of the black part of that tree, the gray part of the tree is still showing, so I didn't cover all that up. And then I can go in and do snow that's kind of piling up on the base of pretty much everything in this painting. So these trees right here, I'm just doing like a pile of snow on the base, and then this tree right here, same thing, pile of snow, just kind of thick paint. And if I want to be creative, a little bit extra, I can grab a little pop of Phthalo Blue. You can use any of the other blues if you wanted to, but I just grabbed the phthalo and just apply a little bit of that blue on the bottom of your snow and just kind of blend it up. Kind of creates a shadowy area on the bottom. So I did that to each of those. And then for the Christmas trees, I didn't do piles of snows, but I did a little bit of shadow. So with that phthalo blue mixed with the white, very, very thinned down, just a few little left and right strokes on the bottom. I didn't want to make a dramatic shadow in this painting, just this little subtle blue area at the base of those trees. And then we can continue on and apply snow to our branchy trees. So this, I still have some phthalo on my brush. If I wanted to, I could rinse it off and just do pure white, but I kind of like the look of a little bit of that blue mixed with the snow because it could be a little bit darker or shadowy in some of the areas. So I'm just picking some areas of my branches and applying the white to the branches. So it's kind of in some wedged areas and kind of in some flat areas. So just little marks of snow piling on our branches all throughout. Some of the snow blobs have a little bit of blue in it. Some don't. You don't have to apply snow to all of your branches. Some branches may not have snow. And I also thought it might be too busy looking if there was just snow everywhere on the branches. So just a few little areas that have the snow. And then, of course, we would have some snow piling up at the base of our lamps. So I did that as well. And there might even be some snow on the top of our lampposts. So I just took some white, just a few little strokes at the top. If it's not snow, it would be like a reflection or a little bit like of an icy area. And then on those bases, again, just a few little strokes of that white. And then right here, I actually did a little bit of white on the post. That helped that post on the right stand out a little bit against that tree that's kind of in the background, making it look busy. And a little bit of white on the post on the left. Next, I'm going to do the reflection. And so a little bit of the black watered down to a watercolor consistency. So with this reflection, it's just little horizontal lines that go in the path area. So it makes it look like the path is wet and icy enough to where we have reflection of our trees and lamppost. So it's just a vertical, wherever your tree or lamppost is, if it happens to go vertical down into the path, then I'm applying the little horizontal strokes on the path area, kind of a reflection of what that would look like. So this lamppost right here goes vertical down to about right here. So just a few little marks on that lamppost. And then maybe there's a little bit from this tree, but not a lot. So wherever there's a tree or a lamppost, and if it's vertical covering, if it gets to the path part, then you apply the reflection lines. Next, I'm going to take my path another step further by applying some more color to it. And this is optional. If you're simplifying this painting, you can most certainly skip this step. But I grabbed some Phthalo Blue, and I'm just doing some horizontal marks of Phthalo Blue in the path. A few little horizontal marks. I'm not covering the original layer, so this is kind of more color that I said that I was going to add when I was painting that path in. And we can, if we wanted to, add some light blue violet. So I'm going to do little pops of light blue violet in there. I love this light blue violet color, so I'll incorporate some of that into my path, just little horizontal marks. I'm not going crazy. I'm not trying to cover the original color, just adding some texture lines in there. And then I'm going to add some pops of yellow in there. So the yellow from the lights would be reflecting on the path a little bit. More specifically, the lamp on the left. The lamp on the right wouldn't really have much yellow reflection just because of the position of the path. But right here, maybe some pops of yellow right there, just where that light would be reflecting. So it's yellow mixed with a little bit of white. That white helps to brighten that yellow up and make it pop. Next, I'm going to do some splatter snow effect with this, and I will be using a toothbrush to do this technique. If you don't want to use a toothbrush, or if you don't have an old toothbrush to use, you can do this with a flat brush. So I like to apply the water with my finger and then apply the white paint with my finger and test it out first. It should be thin, it should not be drippy, but it shouldn't be like super thick. So just get the right consistency and just flick that, and you can splatter little snow dots all throughout your painting. So it shows up very nicely against the dark in the sky. It doesn't show up a lot in the lighter parts of the painting. Definitely have it shows up on the path. So just kind of sprinkle the snow, or splatter the snow all over your canvas. It makes for a very pretty effect. Next, I will be painting the wreaths on the lampposts. So each of the lampposts have a pretty Christmas wreath on it. And this is HOOKER'S Green Hue Permanent. And this is the number 4 round brush. So I'm going to load my brush in some green. Utilize that titanium white. So mix a little bit of white. That white will help your green be a little bit more opaque. So when I do wreaths, I start with a circle. And then I go back over my circle with textured strokes. So I'm painting X's all along this circle with the green. So little tiny X's going in a circle direction. It's a relatively thick amount of paint. It's not thinned down. So there's my first wreath. And then I'm going to do the same thing again with the smaller one. So make a smaller circle, do the circle, and then do little X strokes going in a circle. This one's a little bit of a busy area. I might add some more white to my wreath. So I did a little bit more white on the wreath on the left. A little bit of white on this one helps get that to stand out a little bit better. And then we'll be adding red to the wreath, and that really helps to get some of that color to pop a bit more. So if you want to do like a garland going down the post, I almost thought about doing that, but I stopped myself. But if that's a creative direction you want to go, you can do that. But I do want to do a bow, a ribbon, and little berries on the wreath. I love the pop of red in this. I'm going to dry the wreath first because it's a thick layer and I don't want my red to mesh with my green too much. So drying those. And then I'm going to use the color Pyrrole Red to do the berries in the bow. So this is Pyrrole Red. If you don't have that red or want to use a different red, you can most certainly use any kind of red. You can use blue or change the colors to anything you want. So got my number 4 round brush all rinsed off. I'm going to load the tip of that brush in the red, and I'm going to do little red dots going in a circle, little red dots, and then I'm going to paint a bow. So 2 little loops, and I'm going to have this flying towards the left. Makes it look like there's the wind is blowing. So same thing over here, little red dots, and then the loops, and then we want the little fringes of the bows flying towards the lower left. So there's my 2 wreaths. And if you wanted to decorate your lampposts more, you're more than welcome to. I am going to put yellow Christmas lights on the 2 trees in the front. So this is optional if you feel like maybe this makes it look too busy, too much going on. You don't have to if you want to make it kind of a winter painting and not really a Christmas painting without the lights. That's up to you. I really heavily debated about doing the lights or not, but I'm kind of glad that I did. It makes it look pretty. So this is just yellow and white. So I'm loading my brush in the yellow and the white. The white helps to brighten that yellow up a bit, and I'm using the 4 round brush, and I'm just making dots and applying little dots up the tree trunk, kind of angled as if they're kind of wound around the tree trunk. And I'm going to get some more white on my palette here. The white is going to really help brighten your yellow, especially since these are lights. We want our lights to be nice and bright, so I'm actually going back over most of these lights with more of that yellow and kind of pressing, just dotting that. So that makes those lights stand out against that dark tree. And then I'm just going to continue on adding that up into the branches. And then when you get to some of the smaller branches, instead of clusters of 3s, you can just do like single dots or 2 dots. So I'm going to do the same thing with the tree on the left. So I didn't do lights on the other 2 smaller trees. You can if you want to. I just decided to do lights on the larger trees in the front. And it's the same technique, little dots going up the trunk of the tree. And then when you get to some of the smaller branches, you can just do single dots or dots that are just double. So like those, I just did 1 dot along the branches, and you don't have to put lights on all the branches. There likely would be some reflection in the snow from the lights, so I just did a few little strokes on the snow, and then also a little bit of reflection on the path, so that kind of gives a pretty effect. I'm just going over some of my light dots, making them brighter. Next, I'm just going to go in and do white dots kind of all throughout. So I already did snow with the splatter, but I want some bigger, brighter snow dots in there. Just going in there and kind of randomly adding that with my brush. And then maybe some pops of white on the path, just a few little white strokes in there, but nothing too crazy. And the last thing I'm going to do before I call this finished is actually make the lamppost on the left of the post. I want to make it slightly thicker because the smaller one that's in the distance has a slightly thicker post than the one in the front, so it didn't really match up. So I'm just doing that really quick with the black. I'm going in there and making that line a little bit thicker. And that is it. This is the conclusion of how to paint a winter path with acrylics on canvas. I'm going to sign my name with a Posca paint pen over in the lower right. This is the conclusion of this painting tutorial. Thanks for watching and thanks for painting with me.